a regional champion of the Pokemon TCG with that Gardevoir and Sylveon tag team deck a while back with the Omastar, Green's Exploration. It's no stranger to the success, no stranger to regional championship success. As we go into this matchup here, I mean, this is, again, we've seen this matchup, a whole different dynamic of this when we were in the D block format. We've now rotated over to E block on standard format. Big key card for me, in my mind, it's, again, that Tyranitar.
Yes. How
does Andrew respond to that Tyranitar? I think that Zamazenta, the way he's built this deck now, it's very different from what he's been playing. Not playing those V Pokemon, instead opting for just single prizers, and of course, tried and true, Kyogre.
That's true. I mean, it's interesting. This is something we haven't seen just yet. We've seen a lot of Lost Box. We've seen Azul really show us the power of the Celebrations Kyogre, but I mean, now Andrew Hedrick has the potential to show us Zamazenta from the Crown Zenith set. Again, he does huge damage, 220, as well as the the Snorlax from Lost Origins. These are two basic Pokemon that hit really, really hard, but at the same time, because you're not playing those V Pokemon, that means you don't have access to a V-Star power in like the Forest Sealstone and whatnot, but looks like both players are just about ready. Looks like Cate is going to start us off here, and that's pretty good, because again, as Lugia, you want to go first. You want to be the one to evolve first. The question is, can you set it up? Can you get those Archeopsis to the discard pile? Can you have a Lugia first turn? It's not that much to ask for, but again, when you have 16 bricks, sometimes.
It feels like it was a lot to ask for in the D block, and then we rotated over. We lost Evolution and Sensing Quick Ball, and it felt even harder to ask for. So let's take a look at the prize cards. Things to definitely keep my eyes out on. How many energy cards Andrew has in the prize cards. You're only playing 11 copies of energy cards. So you got to make sure you have a good amount of pieces of that. Single strike energy in the prize cards, that's something you want to see. 3 energy prize. This deck needs to have a lot of those resources, especially later on in the game when these Pokemon are getting knocked out. But I think besides that, we're going to see a pretty good game.
Yeah, things are looking okay. You'd like to see this type of prizing, right? When you have multiple copies of these cards, that means you have access to it. And then eventually you'll draw into those prizes and you'll have access to those. Nothing too game-breakingly bad for sure. And yeah, that's exactly what we want to see. We want to see a good game. And I'm sure, I feel very confident, Cate and Andrew Hedrick can bring that to us as we do see it start here. What do they start with? Looks like Lugia being the active. We have some energies in hand. We have a supporter, but no Archeopsis. No Archeops, double Archeops Ultra Ball. Hate to see it.
Not a lot going on in this hand. Not even something like Lumineon and Lugia V-Star for the following turn to use something like the Professor's Burnett to put more pressure on. I think understanding it might just be an attachment to this Lugia passing the turn over. So,
but hey, that's a double turbo.
A way to set things up, and a great start here with Battle Pass. But what else is in this hand? Pokegear. So it's going to be up to Andrew to see how he wants to sequence this, what Pokemon he wants to grab off of this VIP pass. I think Grading Greninja, of course, is one of the Pokemon you immediately want to grab down. And I think Comfey probably makes the most sense. With the Pokegear in hand, sometimes you want to utilize concealed cards and flower selecting before you play Pokegear, because you're trying to maximize the amount of cards you can look at before you play Pokegear to, if you didn't find a Colress off those 3 cards, off those 4 cards, try and find it off the Pokegear.
Definitely increasing the odds there, just proper sequencing, something I'm sure we can see Andrew Hedrick do for sure. Looks like it is going to be the Comfey. And something I do want to talk about, there is a double turbo energy on that Lugia. You know what, it needs, if you get another double turbo energy, technically you can start swinging even without the Archeops. Because again, we mentioned it earlier, Cate's hand not looking too good. Might have to just play the judge later on. But again, if Andrew Hedrick here misses out a Chorus experiment off the Pokegear, it's equally as bad.
Yeah, both these players have their cards they want to hit, have their game plans in their head, and at the same time have the backup plans, understand what they need to hit to keep themselves in the game. Drew's in no bad position here. At least got down the Lugia V, and Andrew's taking his first deck search, so going to just make sure he understands what pieces are in there. I think that Hawlucha is a really interesting card. The fact that it can just place 10 damage really pairs well with something like the Zamazenta. You can ping 10 into Tyranitar and then utilize the Zamazenta to deal 220 damage and then set the math up perfectly. But these are things that are just going through your head, but it all starts with getting those cards in the Lost Zone, playing Colress's Experiment, getting your game plan going up.
That is fair. That's something I didn't even think about, because in my mind, when with a Lost Box deck, I always think Tyranitar is a safe play. With the, was that a second Pokegear he just drew off?
He got it. Two of his 2 Pokegear in deck are in the hand. I would like to see this retreat first into the Comfey. Just take 2 more cards here off Flower Selecting. And Andrew's going to do exactly that. What are the two choices here?
Ooh, switch
Pretty
card and a
tough.
Cramorant.
Yeah, you want
You do play
Cramorant
2 here.
Yeah, I feel like you just in case you miss here, it's better to just have the pivoting cards, but he's going to be some big Pokegear 3.0s. Do we see Colress's experiment? 7 cards.
Was that
none off the first one, so
that's why we have a second one.
We're trying again.
Could be important for sure. I mean, no, sorry, it is very important. It's important we hit it right here. It has to be the Colress experiment.
Now, Andrew doesn't know that Drew could be sitting on something like Research and double Archeops in hand, right? So there's still very much a potential. Or Drew could draw into something like Ultra Ball and double Archeops off this here. So Andrew needs to really find Colress here to keep himself in this game. 7 cards. Do we see Colress? No off of either of these Pokegear, and that's all Andrew's going to be able to do this turn.
That is true. Oh, no. I mean, what else can you do? I don't think there's another way to get another Comfey. That's very odd to see 2 Pokegears unfortunately missed there. We do see a Cramorant, but without four cards in the Lost Zone, there's not that much damage we can do. It's just going to be a pass. A switch card into the Sableye and just a pass. And
Drew's hand is pretty interesting. If he had found something like the Lugia V-Star, Lumineon here would be great because you can utilize Lumineon, search out something like the Professor Burnett out of the deck, and then play that to discard this. But it's just one more resource that he really doesn't want to have to get rid of at this point, but is forced to do it. 7 cards here off Research, but getting rid of a lot of important resources. Urn of Vitality, one of those 3 single strike energy in the deck. Can he find a way to discard Archeops in combination with some other pieces? And no, it's not happening this turn. I don't think there's any possible way to get through it, or rather to discard Archeops this turn. And you can read the Winded Away this turn, but you're not attacking this turn by any means. And you even saw there, Drew decided to not attach the energy just in case he found double turbo energy, but was unable to find it.
Unfortunate draws there, and something I do want to point out is he opted for the Research again. It is the bigger draw, but also he did have Judge in hand, right? Normally you'd love to judge a Lost Box player, but not when their start is like this for sure. It looks like we are going to play that Nest Ball, gets to find any one basic Pokemon. Could find maybe a second Lugia V just in case Andrew really pops off and gets a ton of cards into the Lost Zone.
Yeah, you're in this weird position right now where you're always against Lost Zone trying to play this guessing game of what variant it is if they're not giving you information. I don't think Andrew revealed any metal energy throughout this point, so you may have to just potentially assume. I mean, if you know what Andrew's been playing, he's been playing this deck with Raikou and Sky Seal and Forest Seal Stone for a lot of the season. You might have to bench another Lugia V, even if it's usually not in your best interest, just because you play that risk factor of what is my opponent playing in their deck? Can I afford to play safe, or am I going to get punished for playing risky in a best-of-3 series?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not that bad here. Getting 2 Lugia V-Stars in play, those are big Pokemon. Those are 280 HP Pokemon. And again, it's just something you might have to do. I mean, you could even be thinking of Radiant. No, you can't play Radiant Charizard because there's Radiant Greninja. So that's information revealed.
That is, for sure. Big capturing room here. This flips heads. This can find Archeops out of the deck. And that could be discarded here off Read the Wind.
Well, whatever it is, it could be discarded either way, because could find a basic Pokemon just to discard as well. Or you could find yourself a Luminion for the next turn. That looks like that's going to be it. Looks like it was Tails there.
So I think with this hand, Drew may just be all in on trying to utilize Professor Burnett the following turn to discard some of these pieces. But I mean, in the Lost Zone matchup, it just feels so bad to have Luminion down. Sure, you get these supporter cards. Sure, you get your game plan going. But you've only got one Collapse Stadium, only one way to remove this out of play, and this is a low HP, 2-prize Pokemon that can constantly be pressured by the Moonlight Shuriken and Lost Mine attacks that Andrew has access to.
It's not done yet.
By any means.
Drew still has access to Read the Wind. He could literally draw double Archeops Ultra Ball and just be smiling.
Listen, if there's a will, there's a way, right? He's got the potential. And speaking of my choice card that I chose this weekend, that Single Strike, you felt all coming down into play. Understanding it's a good attacker into Cramorant. Doesn't get one shot back, one hit back, and here we go. Another Read the Wind attack, drawing into a bunch of research.
Yeah.
But
okay, might have to be the Burnett there.
It might be the Burnett round next turn, but Andrew's got to get some things going. Did not find anything that following turn or previous turn. Found Pokestop, utilized concealed cards to draw 2 more pieces. Can retreat this Sableye into Comfey. Flower selecting, what do we see?
Does find the Chorus there. Finally. Does have to send the Energy Recycler to the Lost Zone. Let's see what 5 cards he decides to grab here. Another Chorus. We can keep the train going.
The problem here is, do you prioritize having something like this Hawlucha to one-hit knock out this Tyranitar, or do you think it's not necessary in this game plan? I mean, it's really tough with the pieces you have there. You want to keep the Colress, you want to keep the Snorlax, and at that point, if you're kind of getting rid of like Penny Nestball, it really doesn't feel worth it. So I feel like you're going to take the smart choice here and get rid of
I feel like you keep the consistency cards, right? The normal cards you see in the Lost Zone. Yes, it's nice to have those techs. It'd be cute to go Howlucha, Penny, Howlucha, just like a really bad a really bad scoop up net.
Sure.
But yeah, no, you definitely want to keep those 3 cards. Something of note as well, Drew also plays Penny, so there is a way to get the Luminion out of the out of play, right? But again, there are multiple ways for sure. Let's see what else Andrew can do here. He does have 4 cards now in the Lost Zone. That means Spit Innocently is now available, and what could happen as well is Spit Innocently into something like the Snorlax for a knockout onto the Lugia. That does line up. But we're going to see right now, just revealed here, the Crown Zenith Zamazenta. Again, does have the Retaliate attack, 100 damage if a Pokemon was knocked out the last turn. It goes up to 220, which is not bad for a single prize Pokemon. Also has the ability that reduces damage by 30, effectively making this 160 HP. Pretty big. Pokestop being played now. Just grabbing an energy recycler, but thinning out the deck.
No, not great at all. An interesting choice there to really prioritize this sort of game plan setup with a single Comfey in play, but it seems like that's the route Andrew's going to take. You've already discarded 1. You've got 1 in the prize cards, it seems, as well, and this is sort of the issue that you run into, is usually it's never a problem. You play 4 because you want to start it, not because you want to use all 4, but the situation it's in, and I think with this angle, Drew is pretty much going to have to rely off this Lumineon to find Professor Burnett, put it into play, but you're not saving yourself slots for this Tyranitar, which, again, I feel like is such a solid card in this matchup. Taking the prizes with a beefy 2-prize Pokemon that can also mill resources from your opponent's deck is not something to be overlooked at all.
That's for sure. And then we do see Luminous Sign now finding a specific supporter in that Professor Burnett. Just easy way to discard 2 Archeops. Why not? A little late, but better late than never here. And there we go. We're also going to see the Summoning Star, V-Star power, putting those Archeops into play. Now, pretty much Drew is set up. This is the board you want. Yes, you mentioned we would love to see the Tyranitar, but there is still time here. Lugia can attack.
Bench is a big issue for me right now, though. Usually you play something like the Radiant Serena so that if your opponent targets down double Archeops with something like the Moonlight Shuriken, you can heal the damage off. But because the bench is full, because Drew decided to bench that single strike Yveltal, that's no longer an option. So Drew, despite a pretty slow start, is only going to be down a prize card this turn. He's already still at even things right now. Both players a little bit slow to get things going. Has plenty of options. Do you want to retaliate with the Zamazenta? I feel like the Greninja has just in a prime position to target both these Archeops out, take 2 prize cards that way, and then try and take your last couple prize cards with something like an Aqua Storm. You have options that way. Or, again, you can go for this Zamazenta play, you can go for this Cramorant play. I think it'll be really interesting to see how Drew commits these resources, because that could be a big deciding factor here for Andrew if he feels like not enough energy is put in play, or he can deal with this quickly enough. Things to think about.
That is true, as Drew here opts to play both, or utilize both Archeopses, opts to accelerate those single strike energy onto the Yveltal. So now that Yveltal can actually start swinging as well there. And it's not bad for a single prize attacker for sure. But yeah, but right now Lugia all primed and ready to go. It'll be good to get rid of the Pokestop as well here. Let's see if Drew has anything else for us. His hand is looking like a couple of researches. Would love to see, again, the Penny really pick up the Luminion, free up bench space. But yeah, there we go. We're just going to see Tempest Dive, taking the knockout, take out the Stadium. Andrew just going straight into the Cramorant, interestingly enough. Okay, yeah, because there's no Comfey in bench. Sorry, I'm so used to Lost Box players just
promote, right? Yeah, just bringing it up. I feel that for sure.
There we go. We're going to see Chorus Experiment being played. Couple of energy and a chorus. Again, the train can keep going here, but it's a lot of resources that we're about to lose. Could probably lose the escape rope. I don't know how I feel about Clara. Maybe you could lose 1 energy potentially. What would you Lost Zone here, Ethan?
It's hard because, again, you want to keep the energy around for later so you can make this Aqua Storm play, but what other choices do you have? Yeah, at this point, if you don't have Comfey to go into, you've got to kind of get rid of Rope. It's pretty much signals to me maybe something like Clara as a supporter for next turn means that we'll be able to see a single utilization of Flower selecting to put himself at 7 cards, but It very much isn't in this case here of I'm going to use Cramorant, hit for 110. You don't have a bench space, so I know Snorlax can pick up the knockout the following turn.
I mean, he does have another Chorus in hand, so he can get up to 8, then start using Mirage Gate. He has 2 Mirage Gates in hand, so he should still be able to hit those specific numbers. But again, it's a little bit slower, especially without the comp phase, as we just see a spit innocently here, 110 damage onto that Lugia. Back to Drew again. Something he could do is just retreat the Lugia, keep it out of harm's way, take the knockout potentially with an Evil Tall, but you're also losing 2 energy there. See what he has in hand. I think it's only a Research really to use, or possibly a Serena, I believe I got to see in the hand. Not sure if there's a real optimal supporter. Again, the best one is Penny. I just cannot reiterate that enough. You mentioned it earlier, bench space is premium. Getting a little bit punished here for playing it safe by benching the Lugia V. We mentioned earlier, it wasn't too bad at the time, but now would love to see that bench space free up. As Capturing Aroma gets heads, that means we can find ourselves a Lugia V-Star. And yeah, we have 2 big attackers here.
A few choices to think about. I think you just go ahead and put this into play. Give yourself more HP. You bring up the Penny. I think it's an interesting card. You could pick up this Luminion V, open that bench space up. You could replace it with something like the Radiant Serena if you have an option for that card. That would take this Lugia out of way that way, or rather, it would take the Snorlax's ability to knock out the Lugia off the table. But the Zamazenta is still there to take the knockout either way, so it feels like how much is it really worth to open this bench space up? You can put the Yveltal to play. I don't hate taking a knockout. You are down to a good amount of resources. You have 1 single strike energy prize, 1 in the discard pile, so you would have to commit your second of 3 Urn of Vitalities just to bring back the single card to attack with. And Drew is just content taking this knockout, understanding it's very likely my opponent is going to be able to knock this Lugia back, but I'm going to be able to take the aggression, take the lead afterwards. So see how Andrew can develop this. I think it's pretty much guaranteed at this point. He's got 2 Mirage Gate in hand and the Colress to bump things up. It really just comes down to what these cards look like.
All right, Chorus Experiment being played. There's the Celebrations Cure. That stays in the hand. There's a Mirage Gate, a couple Switch cards, and an Energy. I think
probably the Switch card in the end. But getting rid of a second Psychic Energy feels so bad. That's the issue.
Yeah, no.
I feel like Mirage Gate Switch card is probably your only option. You just can't really afford to get rid of too many Switch cards. You could also just get rid of double Switch card. I don't think that's terrible either. But
yeah, at this point, we're so close to the 10. And there's no Comfey in play anyway, but at the same time, if we don't draw into another Chorus, how do we get to 10? But maybe we don't need to. Maybe we just start swinging with Snorlax. We start swinging with the Zamazenta, and eventually we'll draw into the last Chorus. Looks like it is going to be double Switch card getting sent there to the Lost Zone. And now, with 8 cards in the Lost Zone, Mirage Gate now activated, able to accelerate up to 2 energy from the deck, 2 different energy. Something we've seen so many times.
So trying to see the total energy count. So there's 1 Psychic in hand, none prize. So there's a Psychic Energy in the deck. I believe a Water and a Metal are prized. So let's take a look and see. So there's no Metal Energy in the deck, and there's only 1 Water Energy. So I think Andrew's not forced to play this Recycler here, but I think if he plays it, he can get out 1 Water, 1 Psychic, but maybe he just really doesn't want to put the Psychic Energy onto this active Snorlax just in case it gets knocked out. So we'll see if I was correct there. No, actually just had the Water Energy in hand. So had Psychic in the Lost Zone, Psychic in the discard pile, so had to play that Energy Recycler to bring these energies back. These are resources that you kind of want to keep for later on, but it's part of the game plan. It's part of what you have to do to keep up and take these knockouts.
Yeah, Andrew there playing the Energy Recycler to full effect to get the most use out of it, but at the same time, do you want to do something like that by putting more energy right now into the deck? There are more cards you have to send to the Lost Zone. Looks like Andrew here deciding to not attach to water.
I think he's just deciding what type of energy he wants to put onto this. I think putting 1 Metal Energy on this is okay. The idea being you keep the Water Energy in deck, you give yourself that option to utilize Moonlight Shuriken if your opponent doesn't play down something like Radiant Serena. It would be pretty uncommon that Drew is not playing that card, and if we look at this list,
attaches the water anyway to the Snorlax, but and then the Metal Energy to the Zamazenta. So Zamazenta almost ready to go as well.
It was just a change of sequencing was the whole idea there. It's just you want to make sure the Zamazenta has 2 Metal Energy on it so that it can fulfill that cost, because it's 2 Metal and a Colorless to attack. So a little bit less flexible. Also gets the energy down to Sableye. That means 2 Flower Selectings or a Colress's Experiment gets you to that number as well. And Andrew responding back, taking 2 prize cards. And I mean, if we look at this right now, what threats does Andrew have on board? Hold on, is he waking up? No, he's not. Andrew has the Zamazenta on the bench, has got the access to potentially using Moonlight Shuriken with the Greninja, has Sableye as a threat, and has Kyogre. That's a lot that Drew has to take into consideration when figuring out how he's going to route these last couple of prize cards to try and win game 1.
I mean, there's so many energy on board. I always thought Lugia was the energy acceleration deck, right? But having all of this on board makes you feel safe against something like a Judge, potentially. Looks like Urn of Vitality being played here by Drew, putting back in that one single strike energy. Is going to need it if they want to attack with the second attack of that Yveltal to do 110 damage plus 60 with those single strike energies.
Yep, so 170 damage. We'll be able to deal enough to take this knockout. Single strike wings. No text on it, but it's 110 damage. So look, it gets the job done. It does what it needs to do. Yeah. The question here is, where do you put the rest of the energies? You could put them onto the Lugia V-Star. That is, of course, a consistent attacker. It's the Pokemon with the most HP left. And this really comes down to the issue, again, that Drew has one of those single strike energy prize, that there are more in deck. Maybe you start to weave in the Tyranitar. Of course, you can utilize the single strike crush down the line if you really need to, but it's more so the Mountain Munch, right? To start discarding some of those cards from the deck.
The Cragalanche.
Or Cragalanche, yeah. Yeah, this is me and like all the different names of things from Japanese and English, and yeah. I actually like the Cragalanche attack name better. So you know what? I'll give it to the localization team. I'll give it to them.
Mountain Munch sounds good to me too. But yeah, but it looks like we are going to be attacking with the Yveltal. Something of note though, if you attack with the Tyranitar, these single prize Pokemon actually have hefty HP. It's going to be tough to really utilize the Cragalanche, the Mountain Munch. Is that the Penny in hand? Is that have I been talking about Penny this entire time and he finally draws it?
No, he's always had it. It's been in hand the entire time, yeah. That piece has always been there, but now it's going to open up these spaces that are needed. Has the Tyranitar, could also now put the Radiant Serena down if he wants. I just like potentially just leaving this bench space open. The risk that, of course, comes with it is if your opponent's playing something like Echoing Horn, they could say, hey, you're inviting me to take the space here, but Drew's going to do neither of those. Going to leave 2 bench spaces open. Lots of potential to work with, but of course, that single strike energy still elusive in the prize cards. But Drew taking the lead again. Andrew's got multiple ways to play this through. I think Zamazenta is the most clear option to just take this knockout, force Lugia to come into the active and try to take prizes that way. Could also use Greninja, but you have to have that thought in the back of your mind that if you utilize Greninja to target these Pokemon down, opponent's just going to have something like the Radiant Serena to heal off some of that damage. Now you're doing 70 snipe to 2 Pokemon instead of doing 90 snipe to 2 Pokemon.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew here is down to, again, he's down to 4 prizes, right? Kyogre can take 4 prizes, but he really has to set it up, and he has to start, again, he has to do quite a bit of work here. In my mind, I get a little bit scared whenever I see my Lost Box opponent go down to 4 prizes, but if I was Drew here, I'd feel still very confident. I feel like the deck's still pretty thick. There's not even 10 cards yet in the Lost Zone.
And this actually makes a lot of sense here for Drew, I think, to just try and take this knockout on the Yveltal. You do have Echoing Horn in your deck, so if you can Echoing Horn back the Lugia V that you just knocked out a few turns ago, set up a play where you can utilize Echoing Horn and Aqua Storm. There's your last 3 prizes there. It seems pretty clear to me that's how he maybe wants to just go ahead and take those.
Yeah, I mean, he should be, looks like big escape rope.
Yeah, this is interesting. I think if you're Drew, you might actually just bring the Lugia up. Takes 220, you heal it off with the Radiant Serena. If you bring this Archeops up, though, you just get put into the same position as the Yveltal, right, where you're just taking the prize and you're letting it happen to yourself. And I think you just kind of have to let this Lugia come up, take the hit, and hope your opponent doesn't chase it down with the Lost Mine. Otherwise, things just kind of get dangerous. The issue, however, with bringing Lugia up is it gets hit for 220 with Zamazenta, Sableye finishes it off, and then Andrew goes to 2 prizes, which means Rope plus Kyogre pretty much guarantees that there will be, or not even Rope, just Kyogre will guarantee the 2 easy knockouts there. So
I mean, something Andrew could even do this next turn, right? You put damage on this Lugia, play a Rope, force it to the bench, and then Echoing Horn. That means there's two prize Pokemon in play,
as well.
And you could essentially win that turn. But again, there's still a lot of work to be done here from Andrew. But doing 220 damage, that's big. Again, single prize Pokemon.
And I think we'll see a Hisuian Heavy Ball get played, so looking through these prize cards, debating is it worth to take Comfort. I don't really know if I would even take it in this position. If you get judged, it's just a card in your deck that you don't want, but
well, if
Andrew
it's on
deciding
the bench.
that, hey, I'm going to put it on my bench instead, it's going to just be there. If I need to get more aggressive, I mean, Andrew has not played a lot of these switching cards, so still has a fair bit of those to play with. Of course, did get rid of 2 of them in the Lost Zone, but there are still a little bit more options to play with. Does still have Clara, but the big thing for me, those 2 energy cards still at the top of the deck. Really have enough resources to be able to pull off an Aqua Storm? That's the question I have in my mind.
Yep, there we go. We do see the retaliate. 220 damage on the Lugia V. How does Drew respond? Does he? I feel like you do retreat the Lugia here, force Andrew to really. Oh, then again, you just knocking it out with the Sableye.
It's interesting because your opponent, again, is very much telegraphing, like, hey, I'm using Sableye. I'm going to knock this out. And from there, I'm going to use this Kyogre that I probably have in my deck that hasn't been showcased yet, but I mean, Drew could probably assume it's in there.
Yeah. You see Water Energy, you see Lost Box, you just have to think of it. Looks like we're going to see the Primal Turbo attaching the V-Guard energy onto the Lugia. Just the single V-Guard. That means we are just going to go ahead and retreat the Lugia. Just wasting 1 energy for this retreat, not too bad. And then let's see what else. Like, yeah, he does already have the Evil Tile, does do 160 damage with those 3 single strike energies. So the Zamazenta should be going down here. Just debating on, should they play more Pokemon? Looks like they are going to play this Ultra Ball, discarding the Tyranitar. We talked about how important this card is, but Drew's telling us, nope, I'm going to use something else. Let's see what he opts to find. Radiant Serena, great grab. If you can fill your bench with a bunch of single prize Pokemon, that's a play I've done with Lugia. Even just bench a Pumpkaboo for no effect.
Yeah, I think the idea I have in Drew's mind right now is how powerful something like Collapse Stadium would be here. If you could Collapse Stadium away this damaged Lugia, just make your attackers be a Tyranitar and a single strike Yveltal. That's all you really need. Sure, Elegant Heal heals down to 80. That's not bad by any means, but it seems like Drew just doesn't have his mind on this Collapse Stadium to heal this Lugia off, taking the knockout, accepting that it's going to be knocked out by Lost Mine the following turn, and really just putting Andrew on a position where he hopefully can't win. But, I mean, it's kind of this weird position where, I mean, you have to assume your opponent's playing Kyogre, right? So do you just expect your opponent not to have the resources? That really doesn't feel like a great win condition to play to, I feel like.
I'm so curious. I want to see it. I want to see Andrew Hedrick just win this turn, because it's possible. Again, mentioned the play earlier. He has 9 cards right now in the Lost Zone. Does have a Comfey in the active. We can go Flower selecting a little bit. Hopefully get a couple of pivots. Chorus still. I want to see the deck. I want to see how thick the deck still is.
One thing you have to always be careful of is Tyranitar does have the Craglanche attack to discard 2 cards in your deck, so you have to be careful that not only are you keeping the resources available, but you're also not overextending too much. But
yeah, I mean,
is it Kyogre time? Is it coming down? I think he's putting this Kyogre into play. This is a really interesting line for... Okay, so does Andrew actually have this here? If there's the Escape Rope, which there is in deck, and the Echoing Horn, this play that you talked about can happen, right? Where you play the Escape Rope, you bring this Lugia V star to the bench, you play the Echoing Horn, and you can target both of these bench Pokemon. And with Andrew already playing, it feels like every time we see Kyogre come down, you have to be confident that you have the amount of resources to get there, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. You put it down, you just have to use it. It's something you have to protect in your hand for sure. But yeah, there's still a lot of cards in Andrew's deck.
Does he have another Mirage Gate? I mean, he played the Mirage Gate, but just put a single energy here. So he does have the second Mirage Gate. So here we go. We're going to see concealed cards, discarding an energy card, drawing
Does draw to Chorus.
That's what he needed to find here. Finds the Chorus. Are there enough cards in deck? Can he make it happen?
Looks like he's going to go down to 1 card, I believe.
And still has Flower selecting, so this will be it, I think. Does he have the energy in deck?
Yes, 2 Mirage Gates.
Can Flower selecting take this last card out? Double Energy Recycler, Escape Rope, and does he have Echoing Horn? He does in hand, so there it is. Flower selecting. Just going to go ahead and keep it. I'm going to keep it in the hand, and let's see him play this out. I think the pieces are there, Wancho.
Yeah, there you go. Of course, you have to play the Escape Rope first before the Echoing Horn. Really force the Lugia to the bench, and because Drew could easily promote a 2-prize Pokemon, right? If Andrew plays it wrong.
Smart choice, bringing the Sableye up just to retreat it off, putting the energy in the discard pile. And this will pretty much guarantee it. Where it is, Echoing Horn. Take that V out of the discard pile. I'm putting it into play.
Oh, it's Luminion.
And it's the Luminion as well, so he only needs 4 energy now to make this happen. Because of that, I think the resources are there. Let's count together. How many energy cards are in the discard pile? There's 4 there, 5. Are there any more, though? That's the question. Because you need to put 2 onto this. Are there more energy left in play? Let's take a look.
All right.
Second Energy Recycler. Or going to put the Mirage Gate first. But does he have 1 more Energy Recycler? And there it is. Energy Recycler. Are there energies in the discard pile?
There it is.
1 energy is all that's needed.
Oh,
put the 2
anyway,
back in.
Yeah.
Let's do it again. Aqua Storm. 2 matches in a row. We're seeing it on display here, Wancho.
I'm at this point. It's not nothing special anymore. 250, that's normal. 500 damage
We were
in one
talking
turn.
about how we had a Kyogre drought, and now we're just watching it on demand here at this point.
But yeah, our players here at the Milwaukee Regional Championships really do spoil us. But man, what a clinic once again from Andrew Hedrick. And if I was Drew, I'd be going back to the drawing board.
And what was great about that play too is thinking back, my main thing, I'm thinking back to that escape rope, right? So selecting that Pokemon up, and honestly, it doesn't matter what Drew sends up because the outcome is the same. You knock the one prize Pokemon out, well, you just Echoing Horn the Lumineon and then target down a one prize Pokemon.
Yeah.
So Drew was prepared for either scenario. It didn't even matter, he had it locked up regardless.
You know, Andrew didn't even have to do it that turn.
That's
he
true.
still had a couple of
He had one more
turn
turn to work with, yeah.
And that's the power of just playing these single prize Pokemon. You got to see, he was still able to get there. Sometimes we don't have to turbo things out. You just have to play the slow, meticulous game, just really planning out most of your turns. And that's something we got to see from Andrew. Again, it's almost the same as a Turbo Lost Box, but just plays a little bit slower. If you were Drew here, what sort of changes would you have to make in your game plan?
I think you got to start attacking with Tyranitar. I think just the way that you usually win this matchup is you just get rid of one resource that your opponent needs, one piece that they have that you really think that you can just go without having, and it just puts you in a position where you can sort of turbo it ahead of your opponent. Like that one Mirage game they don't have, or you get rid of that one Energy Recycler that they don't have, or even getting rid of Colress in the early game. It's kind of how you get yourself in this position, and I think now that you have information that, hey, my Tyranitar is really not getting one-hit KO'd. Sure, it's kind of in a weird position where if you take 220 from Retaliate from Zamazenta, even if you heal it, that means the Lost Mine only needs 30 damage to take the knockout, but it's like risk-reward, right? It's the payoff you take for taking knockouts and disrupting your opponent's flow of resources.
I mean, Ethan, if there's any place to really use that Craggle, it's going to have to be here at Milwaukee.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. I said I
I
just had to.
I'll give you points for that one. I'll give you points for that one for sure. Now again, let's remember that game. If Drew had an extra turn to set that board up, take a knockout before Andrew did, I think Drew was in a winning position in that game. I mean, it came down to one prize card, and that was it.
Looking at the prizes here, a couple of switch cards and a couple of energy. Again, these are resources Andrew is not going to have access to, and we saw earlier, maybe he doesn't need it. He did send 2 switch cards to Lost on
no!
Speaking of resources.
No. That is not what you want, especially when the hand is not looking too great here. Once again, for Drew, did top deck that Professor's Research, but it is turn 1. No supporter card will get played. Does have the Lugia V in hand. I'd like to see Nest Ball get played just to grab a card out of the deck that's not Archeops. That way you're just maximizing the outs. It feels like once you search your deck here and you understand the Lumineon is prized, the way that you're going to win this game is turn 2, you find a way to discard double Archeops. That's the way you're going to play this game out.
Typically, you use the Evolution Incense, not Evolution Incense, the
Capturing Aroma.
Capturing Aroma. Sorry, they're both.
I want it back too, man. I want Evolution Incense to come back. Don't get me wrong.
Typically, you play the Capturing Aroma anyway, and then heads or tails, it should work out because tails you get a Luminion anyway, but not in this case.
This is one of the craziest things about Pokemon is with this Lost Zone deck is when you draw into a Hisuian Heavy Ball without searching your deck, and you have a choice between Hisuian Heavy Ball and Nest Ball. Which one do you take? And you just have to kind of like sometimes ask yourself, he's like, come on, there's no way my Greninja's prized, right? Or there's no way like all 4 of my Comfy are prized. And I think that's probably the debate here for Andrew is what do I value keeping more? And
looks like we're playing it safe, sending 2 escape ropes to the Lost Zone. Something Andrew loves doing apparently is just sending those switch options.
There was a turn last game where he just decided to not flower selecting. He was like, you know what? I'm at 6 cards. I'm going to Colress and just attack with Snorlax. So he understands flower selecting is not everything in this deck.
All right, so you can have you all being played now. We'll get access to that Comfey, but he will also get knowledge that 2 switch cards are prized, and he just sent 2 escape ropes to the Lost Zone. How many switch options does he still have? I believe 4.
He's definitely running low on them. Definitely needs to make sure he's keeping track of the resources that are still available, that are still left.
Yeah, I
feel like it's just a weird position to be in. I mean, you got to use some flower selectings if you can get some damage on the board, sure, but it's really just the Yveltal that it's just tough. It's just a Pokemon that it feels like sometimes you damage it and you're just not really getting value for the extra pivoting card you have to use to attack with something like Cramorant.
Yeah, I mean, again, we have Zamazenta right now in the active. He has to use the switch card to be able to get the Comfey into the active. He does have one more escape rope here, So is going to at least flower select one time. Let's see what he gets. Gets the Battle VIP Pass or the Mirage Gate.
Great grab there. Battle Pass can start to get some of these Pokemon into play. Has Nest Ball as well, so smartly decided to not play Nest Ball to maximize finding more Pokemon. It ended up not finding a Pokemon, but it did in a way find Pokemon with that Battle VIP Pass. And Greninja will, of course, come down for sure. And even considering going with the triple Comfey setup, don't hate it at all.
I mean, if you're in this position, if you're out 4 switch cards, I think you just grab Greninja at this point. And yeah, so it is going to be Comfey and the Greninja as the grab there. Can still flower selecting at least one more time and then draw 2 cards with the concealed cards potentially. And again, you'd want to attack with a Cramorant here, right? Set up damage on the Lugia to really take it out with potentially Snorlax or even these Zamazenta. Concealed cards being played there. I believe did get a Nest Ball.
Does have Nest Ball, so that is the potential choice if he wants to play that to grab Cramorant and at least put it into the bench. I don't think there's enough switching cards, at least guaranteed right now, for him to flower selecting and then pivot one more time into this Cramorant. So it might just be, I'm going to get myself to 4 cards in the Lost Zone, make it pretty comfortable for myself to either attack with Cramorant or to take another flower selecting turn. And it seems like Andrew just wants to give himself as many options as possible to work through this final game potentially.
That's for sure. I mean, still has an energy in hand, can, again, attach it. That's one way of switching the old way, and is going to use the flower selecting. Very tough choice here between Clara and the Snorlax. I think it might have to be, looks like it is going to be Clara instead. I was thinking he has to keep the Snorlax just because you only play one of those.
It's tough. Now that your opponent knows you have Radiant Serena, the strategy of Cramorant hit into Lugia plus Snorlax doesn't work if your opponent can just utilize Elegant Heal
real
to
quick,
heal 20
Drew
damage
did
off.
top deck into an Archeops, so after research should at least have one of the Archeops
so this
in
is
the
big here on this
pile.
Capturing Aroma. Drew doesn't know that both Luminion are prized, so this is a big flip here. Do we see it flip heads? No, that's so unfortunate. Flipping tails. If that flips heads, that's the second Archeops hitting the discard pile. Tails, what basic do you even want in this position?
I wouldn't know. I'd maybe grab a Lugia just to thin it out of the deck. But if you also thin it out of the deck, that puts it in the discard pile. Could still potentially get Echoing Horned. But right now, the important thing is Drew gets information of his deck. And there's no Luminion inside. Maybe you just grab a Tyranitar at this point, right?
You could still grab the Radiant Serena. I don't think it's terrible to have it down this early. It really doesn't change anything. But I guess having the flexibility of having the bench space is a nice option. But it just feels like there's going to become a point where you want it. And while this deck does play a lot of searching options, it's never guaranteed when you're playing 4 of those as a Capturing Aroma flip card. But Pumpkaboo seems like probably the least impactful card. Who knows? You might want to set up a second Lugia. You might want to set up another Tyranitar. Good to have options.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would love to see Tyranitar just to get the Cragalanche you mentioned earlier. Trying to get those resources out of the deck. Looks like it is going to be that Pumpkaboo. Looks like it's just going to be sent. Just going to be researched away. No, we still have the Nest Ball there. Again, Nest Ball able to find one more basic Pokemon. It is going to be the Serena. Yeah. So the Pumpkaboo was the thin, and then Serena is the guaranteed. Because again, Nest Ball, you have to directly put it onto the bench.
Yep, smart choice. Understands Elegant Heal is in this deck. This Pokemon is at the Radiant in the deck for a reason, and it's for this Lost Zone matchup where they're trying to set damage up.
And here we go, big research. Again, he's looking for...
Needs like Ultra Ball plus Archeops, yeah. And needs a V-Star, or I guess that would just get in there, right? So, 2 more cards. Oh, Ultra Ball?
Archeops?
One chance.
No.
So what do you do in this spot? Do you Lugia V-Star for 1? I feel like you have to put some aggression on, but if you just put a single Lugia or a single Archeops into play, you're truly going to get exploited, especially if your opponent can set up a 2-turn plan to target it down and knock it out.
I mean, it turns into it just turns into very importantly getting your energy attachment for a turn, right? That means you're only accelerating 2 energies per turn. You're really going to have to depend on attaching. I think you do it. You take prizes here. You have to go on the aggressive. You have to be aggressive, excuse me. And yeah, take out a Comfey. That's 1 less flower selecting.
It's tough, but sometimes when the going gets tough, you got to really dig through and think about how you keep yourself in this game. You got to win Pokemon by knocking out Pokemon. So, it wasn't wise words from a man, but it all starts with getting Archeops into play, using your V-Star power, Primal Turbo to power this up, and does have another Lugia plus some double Turbo energy in hand. So I'll be interested to see how Drew wants to commit this Primal Turbo. If there is the last double Turbo in hand, I think that's a deck that's probably the best choice. You can double Turbo and gift this active, then bench Lugia, commit your double Turbo for turn there, which means you can commit your second double Turbo to it the following turn, which kind of leaves you proof just in case this Archeops for some reason were to fall.
Yeah, definitely definitely leaves room for energy. You can even accelerate energy next turn to Eviltal instead. And if you can get your energies on board, that means Archeops has done its job. But yeah, right now, again, having Lugia with 4 energy seems good and should be no threat to get knocked out, right? There's nothing in Andrew's deck that can really take this KO. There's no Raikou V or anything, and there it is, Lugia V with the double turbo. And nothing else in hand, though. Boss's orders, let's see. Oh, yeah.
Does have boss and does draw Lumineon off the prizes, so has some options to work with next turn. Once you kind of get into this position with Lugia, you don't need a lot. You kind of got your engine up and running, and your attackers are already on board. But Andrew's starting things off with this concealed cards. I think he's going to flower selecting first because he really wants to find Colress.
Ooh,
easy choice there with Battle Pass, but I think this might just be another big Pokegear. They haven't been very, very kind to Andrew so far in this set.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't need it last game, right?
No, he didn't.
He was still able to win despite missing, whiffing twice, but it would be nice here. Let's go. There it is. Just 2 cards.
He's like, you know what? I'm going to look at I'm going to look at all 7. I'm going to get some more information, but you know it's Colress right away. Sometimes I'll look through the top 7 and I'll be like, yeah, it's not even worth the energy. And that's what Colress feels like in this deck. It's like you just want to have this piece. So
maybe I draw into my full art Colress, you know? Looks like some of the cards getting jumbled up there. But
yeah, Mirage Gate can't be played. Andrew's at 5 cards, so it's a pretty easy. Just put it back in the deck. Things happen at this point. But yeah, like we mentioned, Colress gets found. This will put him to the magic number 7. Means that Mirage Gate is online. Zamazenta can potentially hit in. Even something like the Cramorant can deal some initial damage to follow up later on with the Zamazenta. Andrew's getting rolling here in game 2.
All right, here we go. Colress looking at the top 5 cards. There's 2 switch cards. I think you keep those at this point.
I think Andrew is not very committed to this Hawlucha strategy. It's going right to the Lost Zone.
I mean, I've fallen to the Hawlucha, but I was playing Gardevoir at the time. You know, it does help against the lower HP Pokemon, but when you're facing things like 280 HP, it's less helpful. You mentioned earlier, yes, it could be good against the Tyranitar, but
it's tough when you're not playing boss in your deck because you can never put that play together. So it makes sense that Andrew's not going to commit to that. He's at 7 in the Lost Zone, and it seems like it's just going to be Cramorant time. I think just debating, do I want to play a switching card or do I want to commit the energy? If you haven't retreated yet for turn, it seems like a good option. You're playing plenty of ways to bring this back. 4 copies of Energy Recycler, and there it is. Spit innocently, 110 damage, and if you're Drew here, yeah, you can heal this down, but you're staring down a knockout with the Zamazenta the following turn, but does have the boss, and I think it would be a great play here from Drew to target down the Zamazenta and force Andrew to need a Clara to take the knockout onto this Lugia V-Star.
I mean, Andrew has a gigantic hand. Drew has options here. He does have Judge. He has the boss, like you mentioned, but first we're going to go ahead and Primal Turbo, attaching 2 single strike energies onto that Evilton. Again, even despite only having 1 Archeops, the Lost Box deck isn't as fast, isn't taking big knockouts right away. You have time to really build up these energies. Yes, you have to do them a little bit more preemptively because you have 1, but it gets the job done. Let's see here again. I think I'd like to see the Judge, just because the hand is getting a little bit too intimidating.
It's tough. Like, sure, they have a big hand to work with, but it's mainly like shutting off that attacker feels more like they could have options to work with. But it feels like if your Lugia falls and you're going to fall pretty even in the prize trade, it just doesn't feel like a great option. So I like this play from Drew. We'll see if it works out, or we'll see if Andrew's sitting on too many cards to work with. But there it is. Tempest Dive knocking out this active Zamazenta. Here we go. Andrew's 7 cards in the Lost Zone. Can potentially get to that coveted 10 cards to activate Lost Mine, but this Lugia right now sitting with 190 hit points left. It's out of Snorlax range. That Snorlax was sent to the Lost Zone. Zamazenta's the only thing in this deck that can take a knockout on it this turn.
Yeah, it looks like he does have the Clara to use here. Again, Clara can find himself two Pokemon and 2 basic, 2 Pokemon, 2 basic energy, put it back into your hand. Just great way to recycle resources. And now, again, he's at 7 cards of Lost Zone. Mirage Gate should be able to access Mirage Gate here. Didn't quite see if he had Switch Card in hand. He has a lot of cards in hand,
the resources are there. So there's the Mirage Gate. Okay, go ahead and take 2 energy out of the deck. And because the Metal Energy was put back in with this Clara, yeah, I think Zamazenta's going to be here to take the knockout. So I think Drew made the right play in theory, but it's sort of a weird thing. It's like, do you judge your opponent and hope they don't have a 1 card or 2 cards they play in their deck? Or do you judge them and then hope they don't have some sort of an option? The problem with Judge is, like, they can play Colress still, right, and still dig through their deck, but they have to find the Colress off the Judge. So I'd be interested to maybe reflect on that and see which route is right. maybe it's looking a little bit more tempting that we should have went your way and played the judge, but it's how Pokemon works sometimes. It's unpredictable.
Exactly, and again, Andrew here just continuing to thin out the deck with the flower selecting, with the concealed cards, drawing more. I'm sure this next turn should be easy. Now is the time we play the judge, especially after the Lugia gets knocked out here. That means Andrew has even more cards to work with, as we do see. I believe that was a switch card going into the Zamazenta, and there it is, Retaliate, 220 damage. Don't forget, Drew, you get to draw because of that gift energy. Draw up to 7 there. 4 cards. Let's see if it's anything useful.
The V-Star is nice. You have that potential now to evolve and take the knockout onto Zamazenta. You could also do it with this Yveltal. I think that's probably your better option, just to make sure you don't stare down more necessary damage. I mean, Andrew, again, could set up the same play where this Lugia V or V-Star takes damage. Then the Lugia comes up and you kind of set yourself, or then Echoing Horn comes up. It takes Pokemon out of the discard pile and things get a little bit wacky and unpredictable. But as you said, Judge in the hand has the attachment for turn, and the single strike energy can wait to use Primal Turbo after the Judge potentially. And
we don't even need, like, what do we Primal Turbo to?
I mean, there's the Tyranitar potentially, but I think the issue here for Drew is he's just trying to make it as hard as possible for Andrew to take an Aqua Storm 4-prize turn, and mentioning the Tyranitar makes it just a little bit easier to do that.
Again, I just hate how scary it is that, you know, typically when your opponent's down to 1 or 2 prizes, that's when you start sweating. That's when you start thinking, I could lose this game. I have to start playing more defensively. But not for Lost Box. It's at 4. How is 4 the trigger here? And that's just the power of the Celebrations Kyogre. Here we go. Judge does get the Ultra Ball Archeops and the Luminion. A couple of cards there. And Drew just telling Andrew, hey, you also get 4 cards, you know?
Listen, sharing is caring, right? You got to make sure everybody's on the same page with this. So. More interested to see how Andrew Hedrick is able to respond to this. We'll have all of his energy removed off the board when the Zamazenta is knocked out by single strike wings. And more importantly, does Drew Cate want to power up any more attackers? And at this point here, it really comes down to, a lot of times when you're playing against this Lost Zone deck, it feels like you're playing Solitaire. It feels like no matter how you play it out, if they Kyogre you, if sure you have ways to play around it, like filling your bench up and not benching 2 prize Pokemon. There's proactive things you can do, but there's also things out of your control, right? Your Pokemon are going to get knocked out. Your opponent's going to deal damage to you. How do you respond to that? But for now, Drew Cate putting himself on a 3-turn clock to win. It's up to Andrew Hedrick to put the pressure on this Yveltal and on Drew Cate's setup.
Right now, it doesn't have much here. Does have the energy, so he can conceal cards, draw 2, flower selecting. He'll see 4 cards at least. Then he can even use the penny to pick up the Comfey. And there it is. Concealed cards does draw into the Chorus's experiment. Ooh, okay, so you know what? This is what would have happened last turn anyway.
It's almost as if it's inevitable, right? Do it now, do it later. The result is the same. And I think Andrew is really looking to either utilize Cramorant to attack this Yveltal.
Tough choices here, though.
So, I mean, like, there's so many ways you can go around playing this. I think putting damage on the Lugia V-Star is not a bad option. The thing you always have to consider is if Drew Cate is playing a similar list to, like, what Reagan Retzloff and Grant Shen have been playing, the deck does play Penny. And Drew has not showcased the card. Drew has actually showcased the card to Andrew Hedrick in the set. So by putting damage on something like one of these basic Pokemon, not only can it get Elegant healed off, but it can get fully healed by Penny picking it up, essentially negating one of Andrew Hedrick's turn. He's got to be aware of that when he makes his play here.
If you think about it, Drew even has access to filling up his bench and just using Collapse Stadium if Andrew decides to just put all the damage into the Lugia.
It's tough, though, because there's only 1 Archeops in play, and you've committed so many energy to this Lugia V-Star. How far can that Yveltal really take you in this matchup?
I mean, right now, it does have 120 HP. It's feeling a little bit safe. Cramorant shouldn't be able to knock it out. Andrew does have access to Sableye in hand. Looks like Flower Selecting there has to keep the Celebrations Kyogre, but whenever I hold that card in my hand, I just feel a lot safer. That means I can't send it to the Lost Zone later.
It's one of those things where it has like a big red X over it, right? You try to put it in the Lost Zone and it like repels you from putting it in there. It's like, you have me in a reason, man. You built your whole deck around me. We're going to finish this out together.
All right. It looks like Hisuian Heavy Ball is going to be played here. If I remember the prizing, the only thing left in it is a Manaphy, so I'm pretty sure you just don't grab anything at this point. Yeah, just thinking out the hand. Pretty good play, in my opinion. Let's see what else he has access to. Again, now he's at that threshold. He's at those 10 cards in the Lost Zone. Does have access to Mirage Gate. Can power up.
And we haven't even talked about this yet. There's 3 minutes left in the round.
Oh.
We are very much nearing the end of time. And I mean, the thing is here, I think this game will still finish in terms of time as long as Drew gets one more turn. It actually very much depends if Drew can finish his turn in 2 minutes, because otherwise he can't win the game, right? He has to take 3 turns to win. If he's turn 0 of time, he only gets turn 0 and turn 2. That's only 2 prizes he can take here. So, I mean, I'm not saying time is a factor, but listen, there's 2 minutes and 40 seconds on the clock. Both these players got to act fast. Mainly Drew Cate if he wants to win this game and squeak out a match point.
That is true. It's gonna be tough here. Again, Lost Box just seems like the deck you either win game 1 on, or your best bet is just to draw at that point. We do see the switch card onto the Sable. Again, 10 cards in Lost Zone. Lost Mine is going to be, it could have been enough to take a knockout on the Evoltal, but looks like opting to spread out the damage here.
So putting 4 on the Evoltal means that when it's healed with this elegant heal ability, it's in Cramorant range to be knocked out. And usually you don't like to split damage counters apart from Pokemon, but it's part of what you want to do to knock this Evoltal out, so you might as well get a little bit of damage on this Lugia V-Star. Makes sense, but mainly for Drew, it's just how do you get yourself in the best situation to win? Thinning is winning in a sense to at least try to give yourself maybe the Collapse Stadium out, but do you even have enough basic Pokemon to do that? There's 2 in there, but it feels like the same reason, right? You put 2 prize Pokemon down to discard a 2 prize Pokemon. It's like you're doing nothing at that point, right? What are you really doing there?
I mean, again, would love to see the Tyranitar, because again, this is Milwaukee, and would love to get rid of the resources, because we're trying to throw a wrench in Andrew Hendrick's game plan. Judge isn't working. We're going to have to, would love to depend on RNG to just get rid of Chorus's experiments, or maybe Mirage Gates potentially. But again, with only 1 Archeops, almost seems impossible, as the Serena is being played for the draw effect. Discarding 1 card, draws up to 5 cards here.
Just find Tyranitar. Is this the opportunity? Is this the moment you want to utilize the Cragalanche attack to try and discard some resources to mess things up for Andrew? But it feels like Drew has been so against playing Tyranitar down in this matchup that it may just be move the Veltal out of the active, hope your opponent doesn't have a way to Lost Mine again this turn, put yourself in that spot.
Yeah,
so
it looks like it is just going to be a retreat there onto the Lugia V-Star. Again, Lugia V-Star having 60 damage on it means it also has just 220 HP. Something like the Zamazenta can finish it off too. Just Andrew Hedrick really, it shows you the mind of a Lost Box player, where you just have to put that damage pretty much exact amounts, right? 220 HP on the Lugia sets up Zamazenta, the 110 HP on the Evoltal. It's almost like it's perfect.
And this 15 seconds could separate Drew Cate pulling a match point out of this match and not. Andrew Hendrick will be turn 0. We'll have 2 turns to win this game, and it really will come down to, can he Aqua Storm in 2 turns? Drew's got a very simple plan to win. Take 2 knockouts with these 2 Pokemon that are powered up already. Take these last 2 prizes. Force a game 3. We'll be in time, so the game will end in a tie. So how will this resolve? How will this play out? And more importantly, can Andrew get his deck thin enough to be able to utilize Aqua Storm? These are the main questions that surround this game too.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to see stuff like the Chorus's experiments, the Pokestop even. But I think right now they're going to have to depend on Scoop Up Net at home.
Are we doing it? Is this what Scoop Up Net is now? Listen, they said the card was too powerful, right? We got to tone it down a little bit. But we're seeing Penny to pivot in 2023. Is this what it's come to?
I mean, it's only fair, right? If Lugia has a Battle Compressor at home.
That's so tough. Yeah, you can't get rid of the Echoing Horn here. You've got to keep that resource. And the question for me here is what is there to pivot through? Is there any option? Is it just a pass? Can you do anything? I don't think there's much going on. I think that the choice here potentially is you might play a Mirage Gate to just pivot into Comfey. And I think that's what Andrew Hendrick is understanding. So we'll see if time was called here. Hopefully we get confirmation on who is turn 0, who is turn 1. That would be pretty interesting. I think definitely a big part of this will come down to how everything can finish up. So we'll see.
All right. Let's see. Again, he still can take multiple prizes, right? Right now, Lugia has 60 damage on board. If he heals up, if they heal up, it's still 40 damage on it. We'll have to see here. It still has the exact play like what happened in Game 1 with the Escape Rope followed by the Echoing Horde potentially. Let's see what Andrew has in store. Again, Mirage Gate 4 just to retreat seems pretty bad, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
So Andrew's turn 0. So Andrew has 2 turns to win the game at this point, but he's just going to pass the turn over to Drew Cate. So Drew is turn 1. Problem here is, by just passing this turn over, how do you win this game? So this Lugia V-Star will go to 4 damage counters on it. And Andrew Hedrick only has 1 turn left to win this game. Is it possible to get there?
If you could bench, if I was Drew, if I could bench like 1 more single prize Pokemon, like I'm pretty sure the Pumpkaboo's gone, but if you bench like a Pumpkaboo plus even the Tyranitar,
I guess if they don't have counters, no, you just need the problem is if you put Tyranitar. Oh, I guess
yeah.
Yeah,
you control the game.
True. Yeah, well, the issue is if your opponent has counter Stadium and Echoing Horn, that also will get the job done. But
yeah.
That is still something you have to consider. So,
I mean, if they have like another single prizer.
If you're Drew in this position, you've got to be thinking about how do I lose this game, right? What could possibly go wrong? And I think all the alarm bells in my head are screaming, it's Kyogre, Kyogre, Kyogre. Do anything you can to stop that fish from wiping out my bench, from flooding my bench till I can't win the game anymore.
Let me grab a Manaphy from the binder real quick.
So I think there's less than 10 cards left in Andrew's deck, so you've always got to think about math. 5 off Colress, 2 off of a concealed cards, and another 2 off Flower Selecting gets you to 9, so you're close enough at that point. And here we go. That's pretty much going to be the solitaire game here for Andrew Hedrick. Drew Cate sits back, relaxes, and tries to watch the show. If he can win this turn, that's what it's going to come down to.
Right,
so we'll see with the deck here. Andrew's going to play this Nest Ball. Let's keep count of Colress in deck. Pokegear and Colress are 2 outs. There's also 2 copies of Energy Recycler and a pivoting option. The real problem with this hand, what can you afford to Flower Select and keep and get rid of? That's the question.
Yeah, the tough thing is he couldn't even grab that Comfey with the Nest Ball. He can't thin it out because
space is there for Camera.
Space is
and it feels
premium.
like you don't even want the Comfey on your bench because you want it as a potential card to lost zone away. Get a Judge Shuffle in here. Listen, sometimes you don't want to feel like guilt, right? If listen, I gave my opponent the outs, so.
Here you go.
I think it's literally going to be this Flower Selecting. What do we see off these 2 cards?
Colress.
And he found the perfect pieces there. Colress and a card he didn't need to get rid of. Okay, hold on. We're close at this point. The question, though, is are there 2 cards that Andrew can get rid of? The Comfey is one of them, and I guess the Escape Rope is the second one?
He needs the Escape Rope to send the Lugia to the bench.
Oh, that's true, but he needs the Escape Rope to send it to the bench, though. So he needs to keep Escape Rope.
He can send the Energy Recycler.
He has Echoing Horn. Okay, so he can send both these Recyclers, though, right? So isn't it... Oh, it's close to guaranteed, I think, maybe. But why would you play the Recycler before you play Colress here? You're just going to put some more cards in the deck. So it looks like we're just going to see the Recycler get played first. He can play the first Recycler just to put back 3 energy into this deck. And I think the idea behind this potentially is you put energy into the deck so that you can concealed cards it away. I think that's maybe what he's thinking about here.
I think he doesn't have an energy attachment for a turn, so he actually has to draw into a water energy here. He's going to use the Mirage Gate now, get the metal and the water out of the deck and out of the Colress.
Cards in deck. So it's Comfey, Escape Rope, double Energy Recycler. So can do this, and then I think it's not terrible. But the question for me is, why would you not Colress first if you can afford to get rid of Energy Recycler and Comfey there, right?
Because you have to draw into the water energy. He doesn't have an energy attachment for a turn here.
Or he doesn't have another Mirage Gate, right? Yeah. That's just what it's going to be. All right, here we go. 3 cards here. Does he find the energy? Water energy. Oh, he's got the 5.
He has everything.
It's guaranteed. Wait, so he's got to keep those 2. He can put the Recycler away, and I think he has it here. I think he has the resources. Hold on.
Yeah, exact same
play. A little
play.
tricky, but he's there.
Energy attachment for a turn. There's the Escape Rope, forcing that Lugia into the bench. Similar again to that game 1.
Is there 4 energy there? Is there 5? There's 5. He's got it. The pieces are there.
Only needs 1 energy
on
recycler.
His final turn of time. Echoing Horn can bring this to the bench and steal this game out of nowhere, taking 4 prizes his final turn of the game.
Man, I wouldn't say out of nowhere.
Well, not out of nowhere, but he's been building up to it. But it felt like it was impossible at the start of this turn. But he found the resources he needed to. Big Flower Selecting, and there it is. Aqua Storm for 250.
Aqua Storm for 250 to 2 Pokemon. 500 damage. Again, it's too much. Too much Aqua Storm at this point.
It's raining out here in Milwaukee this weekend.
You know, at this point, I'd be surprised if we watched a Lost Box game that doesn't Aqua Storm. But again, congratulations to Andrew Hedrick for sneaking this one in. Again, it got close. It got very, very close. But sometimes you just need those 4 prizes. You need to get down to 4 prizes. You need to put damage on the Lugia, and everything else will fall into place eventually.
You see how tough this deck is to pilot. You're always asking yourself questions. You're always seeing if there's just enough resources there. And Andrew Hedrick